At the beginning of 2023, James Gunn, the new head of DC, unveiled the 10 projects that make up some of the new DC Universe's first chapter, titled Gods and Monsters, ranging from expected projects like Superman or Batman, to things that are less expected like Booster Gold or Swamp Thing, to things that nobody could have predicted like Paradise Lost, Creature Commandos, and The Authority. The randomness of these projects, the ranging between A-listers and Z-listers, live action and animation, movie and TV, alongside the confirmation that video games will be included as well, made it virtually impossible to predict how this chapter will go beyond these 10 projects and Peacemaker Season 2. Today, as well as a subsequent video, we'll be attempting that impossible task, conveying my genuine prediction for how the entirety of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, will unfold, with the assumption that it'll cover half of James Gunn's 10-year plan, meaning it'll last 5 years. This video was initially going to be just one part, but it ended up being way too long, so I'm splitting it into two, with this first part covering everything that's already been confirmed, and the second part covering everything after that, meaning this video will basically just predict when everything that's already been confirmed will come out, what will happen in them, the characters that will appear in them, and what they will set up. To accomplish this, I looked at the already confirmed projects to see how they can connect, look at the name of the chapter, looked at every DC character that's been hinted at by James Gunn, and every other possible clue I could find to meet this impossible task. The one thing that I will not be considering for this video at all are the video games, because, well, for one, I think that out of everything that James Gunn has announced in interconnecting every single form of media with DC in this one universe, video games being set in the DCU I don't think is possible. I don't think that will ever work, but even if they do go down that route, it'll be impossible for those video games to be important to the overall chapter given how long they take to make compared to movies or shows. So with all the preamble out of the way, make sure to subscribe and like this video, and let's begin with the 10 already confirmed projects. The DCU will officially begin in 2024, but 3 prior projects will now be considered loose canon. This includes the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and Blue Beetle, meaning the events of these projects happen in the DCU, but in a slightly different way that doesn't interfere with the canon of the DCU. The Justice League scene in Peacemaker, for example, just did not happen. What fully isn't canon, that some people might think are Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman 1984, Shazam, and Shazam Fury of the Gods, as well as The Flash, including its ending, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, both of which simply take place in the slightly changed DCEU, which is a separate universe from the DCU. This isn't a timeline reset thing, it isn't a universe reset thing, it's just a different universe that has certain events that happen similarly, like the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and Blue Beetle. The first fully canon project is Creature Commandos, releasing its 7 episodes, this is my prediction here, between September and October 2024. I'm also predicting that they're all going to be 30 minutes long. Creature Commandos features Rick Flag Sr., whose son died by the hands of Peacemaker, although he doesn't know that in the Suicide Squad, Eric Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Nina Mazursky, G.I. Robot, the Batman villain Dr. Phosphorus, who does have a past with Batman, and Weasel, who went through the same events as the Suicide Squad, in which he drowned but survived in courtroom tease. The Creature Commandos are a new monster-based Suicide Squad who go to an island that they later learned is full of dinosaurs, so they nickname it Dinosaur Island, in order to rescue a princess of a foreign country who crashed there named Ilana Rostovic. Waller's goal, however, is to kidnap Ilana in order to use her to blackmail and manipulate the king of that foreign country, which the Commandos are unaware of. The Commandos are mostly a lot more morally sound than the Suicide Squads of the past, as none of them are really villains aside from Weasel, who's too stupid to have any morals. The only actual supervillain on this team, I guess aside from Weasel, is Dr. Phosphorus, who fought Batman in the past. Everyone else are just monsters who got incarcerated for being monsters, and then there's also Rick Flag. This show will take place concurrently with the end of Peacemaker Season 1 and the beginning of Waller, meaning the Suicide Squad are revealed to the public and Waller is arrested halfway through the season, let's say, and this leaves the Commandos stranded on the island, which Waller was unaware is full of dinosaurs. The island is revealed to be completely separate from time, and many people from the past have become stranded there, which throughout the season the Commandos encounter, including Jonah Hex, Batlash, the Blackhawks, the Losers, and the main villain of the season, Vandal Savage. The season would end with the Commandos, a few of their allies that they picked up along the way, and Vandal Savage finding a portal to a land known as Skartaris, or Skartaris, which will be the focus and main setting of Season 2, as it's connected to Dinosaur Island in some way in the comics. Also, along the way, Weasel dies, this time for real, as does Captain Storm of the Losers, Andre Blanc-Dumont from the Blackhawks, and Batlash. Let's say there's a few deaths in this season. Creature Commandos will be built for multiple seasons, telling one long, concise story that isn't actually interrupted by anything else. It will, however, feature characters from other projects, mainly in Season 3. We'll get back to that in the next video, not in this one. Jumping back to live action, Waller would be a mini-series with the same structure as the first season of Peacemaker, meaning 8 episodes each 50 minutes long, and releasing between November and December 2024. Waller will not be getting a second season. The show focuses on Amanda Waller being arrested for her illegal and unethical Task Force X, something that won't exist at all in the universe going forward outside of the Creature Commandos. The show focuses on Waller manipulating certain events like Kingpin in Daredevil Season 3 within prison, with the intention of getting out of prison and then taking control of a secret government organization called Checkmate from its current leaders Harry Stein and Phil Kramer. Waller eventually takes control in the end of the season, along the way manipulating and then employing the likes of Sarge Steel, Elton Janus, Sacha Bardot, Mr. Bones, Count Vertigo, and Deathstroke, all of whom go on to be key players in the chapter story, as the primary purpose of Waller is to show Waller rising to power over Checkmate, who will then be an important looming presence over the entire chapter. Peacemaker characters like Johnny Economos, Leota Adebayo, and Amelia Harcourt all appear as well, with Leota having the largest role because she is the one who causes Waller, her mother, to be arrested. Superman Legacy is indeed the first fully canon movie in the DCU, releasing on July 11th, 2025, the only actual confirmed release date for the entirety of the DCU as of now. Legacy will be the foundation upon which the DCU will be built, establishing a lot of the background for the universe, including the ages of the characters, how long they've been around, and in these two videos, I'm going to be establishing and predicting all of that for each individual project. Like for this one, Clark is 32 years old and has been Superman for 9 years and has been dating Lois, who knows his identity for around 5 years. This is a world full of heroes and has been since World War II, although they now mostly work alone, as the last superhero team that's been separate from the government was the Authority, and we'll get back to that soon. Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, Aquaman, and Green Arrow, as well as all their sidekicks potentially, would all either be mentioned, referenced, or pictured. Supergirl makes a cameo, and I'll get back to her timeline and all those other characters' timelines in their individual projects. Crypto appears in a large role. Let's say that he came with Supergirl, so that means that whatever her timeline is, it's basically the same as his. And Guy Gardner, Metamorpho, and Hawkgirl all appear as members of a government-funded superhero group led by Mr. Terrific called the Terrifics. The plot is all about a conflict arising in the fictional nation of Bialya, which the Terrifics are unable to interfere in due to international relations. So Superman steps in as a symbol of kindness, truth, and justice to the entire world. Along the way, Superman comes into conflict with the Terrifics, but also a few villains like Lex Luthor and Metallo, the Bialyans Queen Bee, and Rahman Hirjavdi. And the mastermind behind all of this, the Ultra Humanite, who's the main villain of the movie. Along the way, Lois and Clark, but mostly Lois, will act as reporters trying to uncover the story in Bialya, with Jimmy and Perry appearing as well. And after the conflict is resolved, Clark and Lois get engaged. Some of this is coming from scoops that may or may not be true. It's possible none of it will be, and Brainiac will be the main villain, but I'm predicting something more earthbound, while Supergirl will go into space. And I'm also predicting that Brainiac won't really have a large role in Chapter 1, but will in Chapter 2. Although it's not one of the 10 projects from the Gods and Monsters video, Peacemaker Season 2 has been equally confirmed, and James Gunn has even begun writing it already as well. Gunn has confirmed that Season 2 will take place in the DCU and be fully canon, unlike Season 1, and this discrepancy will actually be addressed within the show. My prediction here is another 8-episode season with 50-minute episodes releasing between November and December 2025, and it's the only other DCU project aside from Superman Legacy that comes out in that year. Peacemaker Season 2 will focus on the Peacemaker of the DCEU, switching places with the Peacemaker of the DCU, while trying to figure out why Peacemaker crossed paths with Checkmate, as well as Vigilante, Eagly, and Judo Master, who experienced almost the exact same events as Season 1, and are also exactly the same in almost every single way, including their actors. Eventually, he meets the one man who knows they switched, the Psycho Pirate, who will have a large role in this season. It'll be revealed that this is happening due to the universe-colliding events of The Flash. This is the only project that is affected by that movie. In the end, Peacemaker comes face to face with his alternate universe self thanks to the multiverse trying to correct itself. This, the DCU Peacemaker, is a more sadistic version of the character who slightly closely resembles his father a bit more, as well as being less heroic in general. Peacemaker kills his alternate universe self, causing the multiverse to maybe compromise by leaving the DCEU Peacemaker in the DCU, thinking also he's been there the entire time, although Psycho Pirate still remembers. The season leaves Peacemaker in a bit more of a heroic place. He doesn't join Checkmate, maybe for that exact reason, and there will be a Season 3 for Peacemaker, but not for a few years, basically the same gap that Season 1 and 2 had, although he will appear in between that this time around. The second DCU movie will be The Authority, releasing in February 2026. The Authority will also establish a bit more of the DCU lore, expanding on maybe a brief mention in Superman Legacy. The JSA will be revealed to have been active during World War II before disbanding in the 50s due to the government outlawing superheroes. 40 years later, in the mid-90s, supervillains like Kaz and Gamora have taken advantage of the lack of heroes, prompting Jenny Sparks, the literal spirit of the 20th century, to form a new group of heroes named the Authority, who kill supervillains as well as world leaders they deem evil, and the entirety of the movie takes place in this time period, in the last 5 years of the 1990s, or rather, the last 5 years of the 20th century. The Authority's lineup is the same as the original comic, and while the movie begins with the Authority fighting supervillains like Kaz and Gamora and Jacob Kriegstein, it quickly becomes about the Earth being invaded by a parallel timeline called Sliding Albion that was taken over by aliens in the 16th century. Regis Slisfy, the overlord of Sliding Albion, is the main villain. At some point, Swift is killed by Regis. At another point, on the midnight between December 31st, 1999 and January 1st, 2000, Jenny Sparks sacrifices her life to kill Regis and push back the invaders. The Authority then quickly follow and then spend the next few months dismantling the government of that world before trying to get back. When they do, they find out that time passes quicker where they were. Here, it's been nearly 30 years, bringing the Authority to the present day, or rather 2 years into the DCU's future, which will be followed up on with Superman Legacy sequel, which will come out in 2028. We'll get to that in the next video. Going from a movie that takes place in the past to a TV show that at the very least starts in the future, we have Booster Gold, a live-action miniseries that won't be getting a second season, but will be getting a sequel show called Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. We'll get to that in the next video. Booster Gold will contain 10 episodes, each 40 minutes long, and release between March and May 2026. The show will follow Booster's origin story, although it'll age him up pretty drastically to be a middle-aged man to fit Ted Kord's age, as Ted Kord is rumored to be played by Jason Sudeikis, who's currently 48 years old. He just never got anywhere in his life, and works as a guard at a superhero museum in the 25th century. Michael Carter, sick of being a loser, steals a supersuit, his guard bot, and a time travel machine, all of which surprisingly actually work, and returns to the 2020s known as the Age of Heroes to become a famous superhero, calling himself Booster Gold. Along the way, Carter unveils a plot involving the Blue Beetles where Ted Kord was kidnapped by a time-traveling villain named Supernova. In a mind-bending time travel twist, Ted was kidnapped by Supernova to lure Booster because they became good friends in the future. But this actually is why they became good friends. Supernova is Booster's dad, John Carter, who lost his mind after his daughter, Michelle Carter, died. Ted has a relatively large role, Jaime has a relatively small one, appearing in maybe an episode or two. These time travel shenanigans lead to Booster meeting Rip Hunter, the Time Master who, unbeknownst to Booster, is not only his son, but also the man who replaced the non-functional time sphere and supersuit in the museum with functional ones, all to aid Booster on his journey to becoming the greatest hero you've never heard of. 8 months after the Batman Part 2, we're now entering an era where we're going to have 2 different Batman movie franchises at the same time, as the DCU's The Brave and the Bold will release in June 2026. The Brave and the Bold gives dual protagonist roles to Bruce and Damian, but actually it's Damian who has more of a protagonist role so that we differentiate even more from the other Batman franchise. It's Robin who's the actual true main character. The movie also introduces the entire backstory of the Bat family, which is all information that's probably going to be given to us in outside media, but just so that we know, Bruce is 35 and has been Batman for 10 years, debuting in the same year as Superman. In his final year of training, he conceived Damian with Talia. Nightwing is 19, was active as Robin between ages 12 and 16, was inactive for a year before becoming Nightwing at 17. Dick got rid of the Robin identity at 16 due to Bruce taking in a second Robin, Jason Todd, who was 15 at the time, but died the following year at 16 years old. And he's either still dead or he came back to life thanks to the Lazarus Pit but then escaped. He definitely doesn't have any connection to the League of Assassins right now because they have a big role in this movie, and Jason Todd doesn't appear at all. Tim Drake is now 16 and became Robin at 15, the year prior to the events of this movie. Tim has a bit of a middle child story in this movie where he becomes Red Robin as Damian takes the Robin identity. He will have the third largest role in the Bat family after Bruce and Damian. Barbara is 20, became Batgirl at 15, Paralyzed at 17, and Oracle at 18, and from now on will never be Batgirl again. Batgirl will be Cassandra Cain, who is currently 13 years old and recently became the second Batgirl. There's also Stephanie Brown, who's 16 and is spoiler, although she was never Robin and never Batgirl, and is only really currently connected to the Bat family through her Catwoman-like connection with Tim Drake. Some of what this movie focuses on is how Bruce is overwhelmed by everything on his plate, including the insane amount of kids he now has, only for Damian to then also be thrust upon him by Talia al Ghul. Damian starts out as a ruthless killer, but learns to respect his father's methods far more than he ever respected the League's. The Talia al Ghul of this world is a cold-blooded sociopath and the main villain of this movie, who only revealed Damian to Batman as a part of her villainous scheme to resurrect her father, Ra's al Ghul, in Bruce's body, something that Damian knows about and was a key player in the plan. She eventually succeeds with this, but Damian then turns on her, which all leads to this big showdown between Talia and the League of Assassins versus the Bat Family, with Damian taking on Batman, or rather Ra's al Ghul, in Batman's body. Damian doesn't kill him when given the chance, which maybe strengthens Bruce to take back control of his body, and in the end, the good guys obviously win. Along the way, the Bat Family fights the monstrous Batman villains like Man-Bat, Killer Croc, and Solomon Grundy, things that we maybe could have never seen in the more realistic Batman movies we've gotten in the past, and also currently, but also to fit the Gods and Monsters title of the saga. Given how early Season 1 comes out, I'm assuming Creature Commandos Season 2 will release before some of the other already confirmed projects. So, releasing between July and August 2026, this season focuses on the Commandos and some of their allies in Scartaris, a fantasy world in an alternate dimensional plane connected to Dinosaur Island. The Commandos and other characters from Season 1 help Warlord and his people to fight Deimos, who unlike the comics is revealed to be the same person as the Greek god Deimos, who's the son of Ares, who was banished to Scartaris long ago, which we'll see in Paradise Lost. Scartaris is also explained to be connected to Atlantis, which will be referenced for the first time in this universe here. The ancient Atlanteans were highly advanced and colonized Scartaris, while the people of Atlantis sank into the ocean alongside the city. These colonizers remained, and some of them actually mutated thanks to nuclear radiation into lizard men. Eventually, after the deaths of the Bride of Frankenstein, Johnny Cloud from the Losers, and Jonas Prohaska from the Blackhawks, the Commandos helped defeat Deimos, bringing peace to Scartaris. Throughout the season, however, Checkmate searches for the Commandos and eventually finds a way into Scartaris and attacks it. The Commandos manage to calm the fight, but it's too late. Warlord's son was killed in the attack. Warlord then swears vengeance against Checkmate as the Commandos, alongside the remaining Losers, Blackhawks, as well as other characters like Jonah Hex and Vandal Savage, are extracted back to America, many of whom now people out of time. During all this and throughout the season, tales from Scartaris of the true nature of Dinosaur Island are told, and we get our first mention of the Centaur, who will go on to be the villain of the big finale of the chapter. Swamp Thing releases in October 2026 and is entirely standalone from everything we've seen so far. A few years after becoming Swamp Thing, Alec Holland uncovers his true origin. He isn't actually Alec, he's a 100% plant-based entity who took the dying Alec Holland's consciousness for himself. The person who helped Swamp Thing find this out is a man named Jason Woodrue, who becomes aware of the green and uses Swamp Thing's body to contact it, which mutates him into a corrupted Swamp Thing-like being called the Floronic Man, who's driven insane by this encounter. Floronic Man is then motivated to replace Swamp Thing as the protector of the green with the intention of killing all non-plant-based life once he becomes it. Alec's old friend Abby Arcane continues her obsessive investigation of her friend's death and the monster of the swamp, which started years ago, to her husband Matthew Cable's dismay. Upon discovering that Alec is technically alive inside the body of Swamp Thing, the two confess their love for each other, and Abby's husband, Matthew Cable, would die at some point in this movie, only to be then resurrected as a raven, servant of Dream of the Endless, although probably Dream wouldn't actually appear, because once they do want Dream to appear, they'd have to cast him, and I don't plan on him having a large role for the entirety of this chapter. Swamp Thing gets into the situation in which he discovers his true origin after teaming up with Etrigan against a demon called the Monkey King, or maybe some sort of other situation. Swamp Thing won't be getting a sequel, instead it'll be a part of a Justice League Dark universe within the universe that follows a thread of semi-sequels before reaching Justice League Dark in Chapter 2. It's not entirely standalone though, as the Green warns Swamp Thing at some point about a coming threat that can wipe out all life on Earth, known as the Center. Lanterns would be an 8-episode miniseries with 1-hour episodes, releasing between November and December 2026. It would then be followed up on with a Green Lantern Corps trilogy, all releasing within Chapter 2. Hal Jordan is 33 and became Green Lantern 9 years ago. John Stewart is 29 and became Green Lantern 6 years ago. Guy Gardner, to fit Nathan Fillion's age, is 55 years old and became Green Lantern 20 years ago, but fell into a 15-year coma shortly after, so he never made a name for himself before Hal Jordan came along. Hal Jordan and John Stewart returned from from Owen switch positions with Guy Gardner, who maybe appears in like 2 episodes. He mostly is on Oa during the events of the show. The plot involves Hal and John uncovering a plot by the Guardians' original attempt at a peacekeeping force, the Manhunters, as the Manhunters have infiltrated Earth, started cults around them in an attempt to take over and liberate Earth. Hal and John fight back against them, although mostly the season doesn't have a lot of action, it's more so investigations. Also, at one point, they team up with Green Arrow on one mission, who appears in like 1 or 2 episodes, and turn one of the Manhunters' top operatives, Kate Spencer, to their side near the end. The Green Lanterns defeat the Manhunters with some human antagonists, including Chase Lawler, Paul Kirk, and Mark Shaw, who are all the Manhunters of the DC Universe in the past. Unfortunately, it turns out that the Manhunters were indeed trying to follow their initial order to keep peace, as their attempt to take over Earth was mostly in an effort to strengthen humanity against a dormant threat on Earth known as the Center. Hal and John then become aware of this. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow releases in March 2027. Supergirl is 18 years old and became Supergirl 4 years ago, although she came to Earth 5 years ago, as did Krypto. While the world absolutely loves Superman, Kara has found it very difficult to find her place in this alien world, even though she was adopted by the Kents as well, both of whom are alive. On her 18th birthday, bringing it down from 21 for the international appeal, Kara travels to a red sun planet alongside Krypto with the intention of getting absolutely wasted. Along the way, she runs into a girl named Ruthie, who's looking for help to find the man who killed her father. The same man then injures Krypto and steals Kara's ship, leading Kara and Ruthie on a cosmic adventure in search of that man. Up until this point, the story is basically almost identical to the comic. It would change from here on out, as along the way, Supergirl would run into a lot of the more cosmic characters of the DC Universe, the likes of Brainiac, or rather maybe only some of his drones. Lobo would have a large role, Maxima would appear, and some Green Lanterns, including Kilowog and Guy Gardner, who is currently in space. Flashbacks throughout the movie would show a lot of Kara's origin story, maybe even before Krypton's explosion, to show her connection to the planet of Krypton and her parents before all of that explodes away, when they finally find the man known as Krem of the Yellow Hills who killed Ruthie's father. She no longer feels the need to kill him, as Kara has taught her compassion and mercy along the way. After this long adventure through the cosmos that we then learn took actually nearly 2 years, Kara realizes she actually feels homesick for Earth and heads back. Finally, for this video is Paradise Lost, a 10-episode miniseries with 1-hour-long episodes releasing between April and June 2027. Paradise Lost is set thousands of years in the past before Diana's birth, but also leads up to Diana's birth, which had happened, I think, maybe in the year like 1920. I don't think she should be thousands of years old, maybe like 100 years old, and was pretty young when she was fighting alongside the JSA in the 1940s. With Hippolyta, the Queen of Themyscira, as the main character, the Themyscirans are sent into a civil war after a goddess named Circe convinces half of Paradise Island to revolt to seek their true origin. It'll be revealed, and this is completely a shot in the dark, the Gods of Olympus' mission in this world was to protect Earth from the Center, which they delegated to the Themyscirans. Along the way, we meet many of the Greek pantheon, including Zeus, Hera, Ares, and Hades, all of whom have large roles, and even tells the story in one episode of how Deimos was banished to Skartaris for attacking Themyscira. Not all of the Greek gods appear, some will appear in the Wonder Woman movie, we'll get back to that in the next video. The purpose of Paradise Lost is to expand on the lore of the DCU and the importance of the threat that is the Center, expanding the lore of Wonder Woman, the history of Themyscira, all leading into Diana's birth in the finale as well, showcasing some more of the gods given the title of the chapter, and simply telling a really interesting story set in a time period that makes it incredibly unique. That brings the first part to an end, covering a little under half of the projects of the first chapter, which will extend to and end in 2029, meaning it'll last 5 years. Stay tuned for part 2, discussing those remaining 14 projects, what I think they will be, when they will come out, and what will unfold within them. Make sure to subscribe to be updated when that comes out, and also turn on the notification bell, and thanks for watching.